Believe it or not, we are back on this Jeep. If you don't know this Jeep, or if you haven't watched any episodes on this Jeep, this is my 2002 Jeep Wrangler 4.0 automatic that I paid $1,800 for. And the reason I paid $1,800 for it is because it did not run and it had a bunch of rust. Quick little recap to catch you up. I fixed the running issue. I replaced the fuel pump and the alternator and got that fixed. Drove it for a few months, had a lot of fun with it, but now it's time to fix the rust, and that's what I've been doing the last 4 or 5 episodes. The first major bit of rust was on the frame. These Jeeps have a frame rusting problem where they start rusting out in certain areas. Luckily, they make replacement kits, and that's exactly what I did. I cut out the rusted panel pieces and welded in new ones, fixed the frame right up. After the frame was complete, we moved on to the body. Now, this tub had a lot of rust, especially in the floor pans and also the torque boxes. The torque boxes are underneath this section right here. Also a very common issue with these TJs. They tend to rust out pretty fast. Replaced all that with new, thicker metal, so it shouldn't have any rusting problems in the future. And then after all that was done, we worked on the back section. There was more rust behind all of this. This whole section right here was rusted out. These corners were in bad shape. Underneath these corners were also in really bad shape. We got all that cut out and replaced with brand new panels, and it all looks very OEM and fits right up. And then in the last episode, we tackled the suspension. We placed pretty much everything on the suspension besides the axle themselves. But we cleaned up the axles and also painted them. And we switched this thing from a 2-inch rough country lift kit to the 4-inch long arm rough country lift kit. And also installed their new M1 monotubed shocks all around the whole thing. And it rides pretty nicely. I haven't been able to drive it very far, just around the yard, but it seems to be all working really well. And once this thing is fully back together, we'll be able to test it out and fully tell its capabilities, which I'm really excited about because I haven't taken this thing off-road yet because of all the rust. Kind of afraid to. Now that we're all caught up, let's talk about what we're gonna do in this episode. These 2 boxes are from Rough Country. This is a new rear drive shaft and a slip yoke eliminator. Now, since we lifted this thing, we kind of need these to do any kind of major off-roading. The slip yoke eliminator kit replaces some pieces in your transfer case, and that allows it to change length in response to your Jeep's moving off-road with the drive shaft and everything back there. Since the lift kit raised the Jeep up a lot more, we need a longer drive shaft to accommodate for that. I'm not very good at explaining exactly what it does. I can picture it in my head, but it's something we need if we want to do any kind of major off-roading, and might as well do it now. So that is what's up first. Later on, I'll be working on the bodywork, getting this thing prepped and ready for paint. Hopefully next episode, it will have a brand new paint job. First thing we need to do, though, is drop this transfer case, unhook both of the drive shafts, drop it down, and put it up on a table, and hopefully get this thing switched out. I watched a few videos on how to do it on the Jeep TJ. Doesn't look too difficult, but hopefully it isn't. We'll see. Stay tuned. Let's do it. I was not looking forward to doing that at all. A couple things that were pretty frustrating or annoying. I'll go over that, but overall not absolutely terrible. One of the most difficult things about this was actually removing the transfer case from the transmission and dropping that all down. And the reason that was so difficult is because a lot of these studs were actually rusted. The nuts weren't wanting to come off, and it was hard to get your hand up in there because it's a tight space up in there. That was probably the most difficult part. I got all of them off except for one. I have this own personal rule where if a nut or a bolt is taking me more than 45 minutes to get off, I just cut it off or break it off. That way it saves me some kind of sanity, because if not, I'm gonna start throwing things. So I had to cut that last bolt off, and then after that, it was much easier. So since I had to cut this stud off, I ended up replacing all of them. They were in rough shape anyway. The nuts were also in very rough shape, so better to replace it all. I think it was only like 30 bucks to replace them. To remove these studs, I had to weld the old nuts on there and then back them out. There's definitely other ways to remove them, but I just found that to be the quickest and easiest way. Another issue were these snap rings. These snap rings were in this area right here, and these proved to be pretty difficult to take off by yourself. This snap ring took me about 45 minutes to remove by myself with the old pliers I had. But once I ordered these ones, it only took me about 5 minutes. It was a big difference. So that's one more other tip. Other than that, once you get it off, you're gonna take this thing out, replace it with the new one that comes with the kit. Same thing with this whole assembly. You're gonna swap all that out. So you're gonna slap all that back together, torque it down to spec, and throw it back in the Jeep. Then you're done. I'm making that sound kind of easy. I did watch a few tutorials on different people's take on it. There's plenty of information out there on how to do it. I didn't need a press or anything like that. Some of these slip yoke eliminator kits call for a press, but this one did not. So it made it very easy for just a normal guy to install it. And it's also a lot easier when you have the correct tools to use. So it's all back together now. I'm pretty confident that it's gonna be working perfectly fine. I would test it out, but I do have the front end taken apart, and that kind of leads me to my next segment of going back in time and explaining what happened. All right, we're skipping forward in time just a little bit. I'm waiting for a part to come in to finish up the transaxle. That comes in tomorrow, but I want to waste a day of not doing anything. So we're gonna go ahead and skip forward, and I'm gonna start taking apart this front end. We need to take it apart because I noticed a little bit of surface rust, especially on the inside of the ender fenders. A little bit of surface rust on the hood, and I want to go ahead and get all that ready, sanded down, prepped, and I think I'm gonna bed line the whole inside. Inside of the fenders at least. That way it matches the hood, because the hood is already bed lined on the inside. That needs a little bit of touching up work to do. Also, I see a few little dents and surface rust on the outside. We need to go ahead and take care of that, sand it down, and get all that fixed with some body work. All this is going to need to be disassembled for the paint job anyway, so might as well go ahead and start doing it now. Get it all ready, prepped, primed, ready for paint. I took it all apart already on my parents' Jeep. It wasn't the easiest thing ever, especially the grill here. It's not super easy to get out, and I think it's going to be even worse since the bolts are a little tight and a little rusty, so we'll see. Hopefully it's not too bad. Let's get this knocked out and make sure there's no other rust that we have to deal with. Go ahead and handle all that. Let's do it. Front end wasn't too hard to take off. There were a few bolts that actually broke off. Kind of expected to happen, but we got it all taken care of. There are a few rust holes down here, which I knew about, but I couldn't get to them until we got the fenders off. Right here, got it all cut out, got all the rust cut out and replaced with new metal. Looks pretty good. After all that was done and I fixed the thread where the bolts broke off, I went ahead and painted it all black, and then I went over it with bed liner. The reason I painted the firewall black and rhino lined it is because I'm changing the color of the rest of the body. And with everything black on the inside, it looks a lot better. You can either do black or color match it. And the reason I go for black is because it matches with pretty much everything. So don't have to worry about spending a lot of money on paint to paint all this. And black is just easier all around. Only other problems I had up here were these bolts that hold on the AC condenser. Those were stuck, so I had to cut those out. But other than that, and the 3 bolts that broke on the fenders, not too terrible. I'm gonna end up replacing all those bolts because they were pretty rusty, even the ones that came out. Replace all those with new ones, that way we don't have to worry about it and future owners don't have to worry about taking this thing apart if needed. Hopefully we don't have to take it apart again anytime soon. Moving outside, here's all the parts that we needed to paint. This is my driver's fender. This fender was original to the Jeep, and as you can see, it is pretty rusty. These fenders like to rust out in this area on the top, and my Jeep was no exception. A bunch of rust holes underneath, on the side. I could have spent some time fixing this, but there's just so much around it. It's gonna be a lot of patch panels, and especially underneath right here, that's gonna be hard to fix because I gotta cut all that out and replace it all. In the long run, it's gonna be a lot easier and hold up a lot better if I just replaced it, and that's what I did. I ordered a new one, got all sanded down, painted on the inside, and rhino lined on both sides, the inner fenders and on the inside underneath the hood. Moving on to the hood, I knew there were some rust spots on it, and I didn't want to end up replacing this because it's an expensive part to replace. So what I did is I bought a vent panel, which I think looks really good. And the spots I cut out were the exact spots where the rust was, so I didn't have to do any kind of fixing on that. Just cut it out and put a new vent on there. The vent looks cool and acts as a cooling system for the motor. This fender was already replaced before, probably a long time ago, because it was already getting surface rust on it. Nothing too major. We were able to clean it all up, get it painted and rhino lined to match everything else. Same thing with the battery holders slash fender mounts. Got all that cleaned up and painted and rhino lined to match everything else. Hold it up over time and it looks really good. With all that done and out of the way, we can either start putting it back together and getting it ready for paint, or we can paint it all while it's off the Jeep. I find it easier to paint it all while it's off the Jeep. It's all in the little details. You want to have a good paint job, so you want to paint all the insides of the gaps and everything, and I find that a lot easier to do with it all taken apart. And that pretty much concludes this episode. Next episode is going to be focusing on paint. In the next episode, we're going to be finishing up the little bit of body work we have to do, priming it all in, and putting a brand new color of paint on it. I have the paint color picked out, and pretty excited about it. It's going to be unique, I think. And I hope people like it. We'll see. If you're not following me on Instagram, I post behind the scenes. I actually posted a sneak peek of the color on there. You can follow me there if you want to. If not, I will catch you in the next episode, getting this thing painted and put back together. Can't wait.